All right, we are on. Okay, so I'm going to start with what qualities I think I make a good leader. I think that leaders that back up their actions or their words with their actions are the best leaders. So they don't just say things that they're going to do, they actually do them. And in chapter 1, the book talks about how the difference between leaders and managers is leaders inspire innovation and stimulate change, whereas managers kind of just tell you what to do. And I agree that a leader that kind of wants you to have creative thoughts and think is a better leader than just kind of tells you what to do. I liked the idea of leaders using storytelling to get people kind of behind them or on their same page. So I thought Obama was a good example of a leader that used storytelling to enact change and influence people's opinions instead of saying, like, this is what I'm going to do and this is how I'm going to be a good leader. He told a story of something that was happening in our country and how he planned to make that change, and really drew from like empathy and getting people behind him.
Yes. Awesome. On that note, no, just to kind of elaborate a little bit on what you said. Yeah, storytelling, I feel like it really pulls people together. A lot of people can relate to certain stories, especially like what you were saying about Obama. He was able to bring people together through like a shared experience. And going forward on what I think makes a good leader, obviously throughout between the authoritarian democratic laissez-faire, I think you could use those in specific situations, but I really liked the democratic style. I like the fact that a leader will let you have input. It's a two-way conversation. They're not just telling you, because I don't believe most people want to be told, what to do. They want to have input and say on, especially when in a company where ideas are crucial. They want to feel motivated. They want to feel empowered. So I think empowerment is another like key factor in that. Collaboration also ties in with that. I think a good leader asks for and gets together with group members to get their opinions, ideas. And emotional communication was another one. I'm not sure if that's specifically how the book put it. Knowing how to not just deal with the ups and downs in a company, and knowing how to deal with a crisis situation, but also how to deal with there's so many dynamic personalities, so how to deal with somebody who's for instance highly emotional, highly sensitive, highly reactive, and how to deal with somebody who's maybe not so emotional. So I think those are kind of some key components. And the example that I had was, I'm sure we have all had terrible leaders. I had, or terrible bosses. I had a lady that I worked with at a restaurant. She was very domineering, took authoritarian to another level, very demeaning. So obviously being demeaning, talking down to people, not good. So that's my example of somebody who's not a good leader / manager. That's what she was. So
Okay,
yes.
yeah, I feel like going off of what you said, the part that stood out to me most in the chapter of what like a good leader is when you look at the leader-follower relationship, because like the example said in the book, for example, if you Google the word leadership, there was 774 million results, but if you look up the word followership, there was only 564,000. So that just like that example goes to show of how overcast the credit is when it comes to followers versus their leader. Because like, for example, if you look at companies like Facebook or Twitter, everyone only knows the creator's name. They don't know all the people who put their time and effort into making the app or like company successful. And like have it grow, where if there's no leader follower relationship, it'll just be like, why would anyone want to work for you if you're taking all the credit and you don't show any appreciation for anything? Where like Mark Zuckerberg couldn't run Facebook by himself. He couldn't do everything by himself as much as he wants to try and admit it. Like he wouldn't be able to do it without anyone helping him. And like another strong attribute that I feel like a leader needs is the willingness to communicate. Because if you come into a like a store, for example, like my past manager used to have this thing where she would just overnight change everything in the store and not tell a single person. And we'd all come in at 3 a.m. to open the store, and it'd be like a brand new store, and we'd all be lost, looking around like chickens cut off with their heads, not knowing what was happening. And then she wouldn't even be there to see like the flames go up when we're panicking to find everything in the store. Or like, it's just certain traits where you need to be able to share what you're doing with everyone so that there's a mutual respect. Otherwise, everyone's just going to hate working there and eventually stop doing what you need done because they don't feel like they need to help you, when there's no appreciation or mutual agreement to share like what's happening.
No, yeah, definitely. And to add to that, so you were talking about how like when you're a good leader, it's clear communication between the followers and the leader. And so to add to that, like working in sales, I deal with a lot of laissez-faire type of leaders where, and then we learned from the book, that's our French word for translated as leave them alone. And that's kind of how it is in sales. You kind of have a leader who motivates you guys, kind of gets everyone in the same direction. But at the end of the day, we're all on our own. You know, we have to, he has to, basically the leader's goal is to kind of get us in the right direction and kind of push us in a certain direction, but we got to do the work. We got to do everything on our own. We create our own schedules. We're out there prospecting on our own. And that's what I love about my manager is he's not very hands-on. He's not doing everything for us, but he's more of kind of someone to guide us. And so that's definitely my best example of a laissez-faire kind of leader. And sometimes when you work at other places, an example of how that can go the wrong way is when managers want to be hands off. They kind of want to let everyone else do it, even though it's kind of their job, you know, to do a lot of the things that might make someone else create the schedules when maybe they should be creating the schedules, kind of stuff like that. So that's definitely where I kind of see that has to be clear in communication. So yeah, definitely.
Just to add to that laissez-faire, and I don't know if I mentioned it before, but I think there's very appropriate times. I know in the discussion post I talked about you're not going to implement a laissez-faire or democratic style if you have a crisis situation, hostage situation, warfare. You're not going to ask people's opinion. So I think while it might be better, it it really depends on the, you know, my brother's a sheriff, my dad's a sheriff, retired sheriff. Like you have to know, right. And if something serious is going on, like a hostage, you need to be told what to do by the experts. Like I used in the discussion board, SWAT team. You're going to let the SWAT team make the executive decision. You're not going to have input and say, I think this is what needs to go on. But also like Google, and I was reading some of these other companies, Google, Amazon, it's kind of their atmosphere is leave them alone. They have like a clear cut direction on what they need to do, but their company kind of gives them free reign. So I don't know if you guys remember that.
I think that also though, like laissez-faire is like can be tricky. You have to hire the right people in that kind of atmosphere. So if you're not a go-getter and if you're not structured, you're on your own, you're not going to do well in that kind of environment. You need more of like a democratic or an authoritarian type of company to work for, or you need a leader that's like that. I think that it also depends on the personality of the employee or whoever's taking the direction. If they can handle the laissez-faire and still get their things done, then it works. But if not, then like not always. And like I think I used an example in the discussion board post, like you're not going to give a 5-year-old like a do whatever you want. Like you have to be very like specific on what they need to do so that they can learn like right from wrong and things like that.
Right.
Yeah. And just to add on that real quick, something I wanted to mention, especially like this in the position I'm in, if you're working with groups a lot, you deal with a lot of rejection. You deal with a lot of times where you just strike out. Stuff happens, you know, you don't want to point the finger. When you're kind of working with other people, it's really easy to just kind of point that finger, to not want to point it at yourself. And that happens all the time. Whatever group you're in, it just always seems that it's kind of just easy to point the finger. And so in this position, you have to be able to deal with rejection. So that's why the laissez-faire kind of leader is perfect for this kind of role. So.
Yeah, I agree. Because if you're like what you were saying, where you're not going to give a 5-year-old like do whatever you want or whatever, but at the same time, if you were to tell them what to do and then yell at them when they didn't, then they're not going to do that again because they're not going to want to listen to you when you're just in their eyes being mean or dictatorship. Like it has to be a mutual respect of understanding that you're not saying like do whatever you want, but at the same time you're like, but this needs to get done.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
I think on a similar thing to that, like authoritarian, it's a little bit more like when people abuse like an authoritarian leadership style is they talked a lot in the book about when a leader is selfish and they think of like what will get them, move them up or get them like the kudos at the company or something like that. That's not a good leader. A good leader is looking out for the greater good and kind of like what you were talking about, thinking about the followers at the company and not just themselves. Kind of full circle back to that.
Oh, yeah.
Cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think that we could probably wrap up. We're at 11 minutes and 30 seconds. So
Oh, okay.
we're close enough, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.